We've all been in conversations where a single sentence turns calm discussion into chaos. The truth is, it's rarely what we say, it's how we say it. Some phrases, even when said with good intentions, can instantly trigger defensiveness, anger, or distance. Today we're uncovering those silent conflict starters and how to replace them with words that invite understanding instead of arguments. There's a quiet danger in the words we use, especially the ones that sound harmless in the moment. You always and you never are two of the most common triggers that instantly put people on the defensive. These phrases paint someone's entire identity with one stroke, erasing every exception, every moment of effort, and every time they tried to do better. When you say, "You never listen," or "You always do this," what they hear is not your frustration, it's judgment. And when people feel judged, they stop listening and start protecting themselves instead of understanding you. Think about it. When was the last time someone said, "You always," to you and you felt calm? Probably never. That's because these words turn a momentary issue into a lifelong accusation. The person on the other side doesn't hear your concern. They hear an attack on their character. It's no longer about what happened, it's about who they are. And once a conversation moves from behavior to identity, the chance for resolution almost disappears. People don't want to defend their actions, they end up defending their worth. Absolutes like always and never erase nuance. And nuance is where understanding lives. Relationships thrive in the middle ground, in the space where we say sometimes, often, or it feels like. Those softer, more accurate phrases open a door for conversation rather than slamming it shut. When you replace "you never help me" with "it feels like I've been handling a lot on my own lately," the energy shifts. It's no longer about blame, it's about balance. It's an invitation to work together, not a declaration of war. What makes "you always" and "you never" so powerful is that they sound like facts, but they're actually feelings wearing a disguise. We say them when we're hurt, tired, or frustrated. They come out fast, sharp, and final. But the truth is, those words are rarely accurate. Nobody always forgets, and nobody never tries. The moment we exaggerate, we lose credibility, and that loss creates distance. The other person stops hearing your pain and starts gathering evidence to prove you wrong. Suddenly, both of you are building cases instead of building understanding. The real work begins when you start to slow down before you speak. The goal isn't to suppress what you feel, it's to express it in a way that can be heard. Instead of saying, "You never care," try saying, "I feel like my feelings don't matter when this happens." The message stays honest, but the tone becomes safer. That's what emotional awareness looks like in action, honoring your truth while respecting the other person's humanity. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's how you keep a tough conversation from turning into a verbal battlefield. Every time you choose to trade absolutes for accuracy, you take the heat out of the moment. You remind yourself that conflict doesn't have to be destructive. It can be clarifying. It can reveal needs, expectations, and hidden frustrations that were buried under generalizations. Words are tools, and when used intentionally, they shape peace instead of chaos. But when we throw around phrases like "you always" or "you never," we turn tools into weapons. We might win the argument, but we lose connection, and connection is what we actually need most. So, before those words leave your mouth, take a pause. Ask yourself, am I describing a pattern, or am I just expressing pain? If it's pain, then speak it as pain. Don't hide it behind exaggeration. Don't make the other person your target when all you really want is to be understood. Every moment of conflict gives you two options: to react from emotion or to respond with intention. The words you choose decide which one you get. When tension rises and voices get louder, the phrase most people reach for is "calm down." It sounds reasonable, even helpful, but beneath those two words lies a spark that can set everything on fire. Calm down doesn't calm people. It invalidates them. It tells them that their emotions are too much, too loud, or too inconvenient. What they hear isn't care, it's control. You're not asking them to calm down for their sake, you're asking them to do it for yours. And when someone feels that, their body reacts instantly. They tighten, defend, and push back harder because being told to calm down feels like being told that how you feel is wrong. In the middle of conflict, emotion is energy trying to tell a story. It's not something to silence, it's something to understand. When someone is upset, what they need most is to feel seen, not managed. Saying, calm down, skips that step completely. It's like putting a lid on a boiling pot without turning off the heat. The pressure doesn't go away, it just builds. And when the lid finally comes off, it's bigger, louder, and more painful than before. That's why the phrase never works. It might stop the noise for a moment, but it never resolves the reason behind it. Instead of saying calm down, try listening for what's underneath the anger or frustration. Maybe it's fear, disappointment, or feeling unheard. Emotions are rarely random. They're responses to something deeper. When you respond with curiosity instead of command, you shift the energy completely. You can say, I can see this is really upsetting you. Can you tell me what's bothering you most? That approach acknowledges emotion without trying to erase it. You're not minimizing, you're validating. And validation is the language that quiets chaos without force. People don't calm down because you tell them to. They calm down because they feel safe enough to. Emotional safety isn't created through control. It's built through presence. Your tone, your posture, your willingness to listen all send a message. You don't need to fight to be heard. That's when walls start to lower. You're showing that you care more about understanding than winning. The moment someone realizes you're not there to overpower them, their body begins to relax on its own. It's not magic, it's neuroscience. Connection reduces threat, and threat is what fuels emotional reactivity. The phrase calm down also assumes that calm is the goal when sometimes it shouldn't be. There are moments when frustration or sadness is valid, even necessary. Maybe someone needs to release what's been building for a long time. When you rush them toward calm, you're telling them to skip their healing. True communication isn't about hurrying someone out of their emotion. It's about holding space while they move through it. The longer you allow them to express freely, the faster they naturally reach calm on their own. It's counterintuitive but deeply true. The more permission people have to feel, the less they need to defend. When you catch yourself wanting to say, calm down, that's your cue to check your own state. Often it's not their intensity that's the problem. It's our discomfort with emotion. We don't know how to sit in the tension, so we try to shut it down. But emotional maturity means staying grounded even when others aren't. It means breathing before speaking, observing before reacting, and asking before assuming. If you can regulate yourself first, you create a model of calm instead of demanding it. People mirror what they experience. If you bring stillness, it invites stillness. If you bring control, it invites resistance. So much of conflict resolution isn't about saying the right words. It's about creating the right energy. The difference between calm down and I'm here with you is night and day. One closes the door to connection, the other opens it. One makes people feel small, the other reminds them they matter. The next time emotions rise, remember that empathy diffuses what authority amplifies. You don't need to tell people to calm down. You just need to give them enough safety to find their calm again. When tension starts to rise and frustration builds, it's easy to throw out phrases like whatever or I don't care. They sound like a way to end the conflict, but they actually do the opposite. These words are emotional walls disguised as indifference. They tell the other person, I'm done trying, even when part of you still wants to be understood. The moment you say, whatever, you're not solving the problem. You're stepping out of the conversation altogether. It may feel like protection, but it's really rejection in disguise. It shuts the door on connection and leaves both sides feeling unheard. What makes whatever so damaging is its coldness. It doesn't attack, but it dismisses. And dismissal cuts deeper than anger because it makes people feel invisible. When someone says, I don't care, it doesn't just end the conversation, it ends the sense of significance. It tells the other person that their words, emotions, and effort no longer matter. That's one of the most painful messages you can send during a conflict. People can handle disagreement, but they struggle with disregard. The silence that follows whatever is rarely peaceful. It's heavy, filled with all the things left unsaid. Most of the time, we don't use those words because we truly don't care. We use them because we care too much and don't know what else to do with that emotion. They're a shield we throw up when we feel overwhelmed, unheard, or powerless. It's emotional self-protection through withdrawal. Instead of saying, "This hurts," or "I feel like you're not listening," we shut down and act like we don't care. But pretending not to care doesn't heal the wound. It just hides it. And hidden emotions always find their way back into future conversations, only louder and sharper. When you use whatever as an exit, you're signaling that connection isn't safe. It tells the other person that it's not worth sharing or explaining anymore because you've stopped engaging. Over time, that creates emotional distance, and distance builds resentment. The person who says whatever might feel like they're maintaining peace, but what they're really maintaining is silence. And silence in relationships often sounds like comfort until it turns into indifference. The irony is that the same phrase meant to stop pain ends up deepening it. It keeps both people stuck in a loop of pretending and protecting instead of communicating and healing. To change this pattern, you don't need perfect words. You just need honest ones. The next time you feel whatever rising in your throat, pause and name what's underneath it. Maybe it's exhaustion. Maybe it's fear that saying more will make things worse. Maybe it's just sadness that things aren't being understood. Saying, "I'm overwhelmed right now," or "I don't know how to explain what I feel," creates a bridge instead of a wall. You're still being truthful, but you're doing it with vulnerability instead of withdrawal. Vulnerability doesn't make you weak. It makes connection possible again. It also helps to remember that whatever isn't just a word. It's an energy. You can say nothing at all and still communicate the same detachment through your tone, your eyes, or your silence. Communication isn't only verbal, it's emotional. When you disengage emotionally, people feel it instantly. The solution isn't to force yourself to talk when you can't, but to communicate that you're taking a pause, not abandoning the conversation. You can say, "I need a moment to cool off, but I want to come back to this." That small sentence tells the other person that you still care, even if you need space. It keeps the door open instead of closing it completely. In conflict, the words "whatever" and "I don't care" feel like escape routes, but they're really dead ends. They stop growth, connection, and repair in their tracks. Real peace doesn't come from shutting down. It comes from showing up, even when it's uncomfortable. When you replace withdrawal with honesty and detachment with curiosity, the energy of the moment shifts. You move from defending yourself to understanding each other. And in that shift, conversations that used to end in silence start leading toward clarity, compassion, and genuine resolution. There's a certain sting in hearing the words, "you're overreacting." It's not just a comment, it's a dismissal of emotion. The phrase tells someone that their feelings don't match the situation, that their emotional response is too much, too intense, or somehow inappropriate. But here's the truth. When people are told they're overreacting, they don't suddenly become calm, they become defensive, because being told you're overreacting doesn't calm the storm, it fuels it. It's a phrase that shuts down understanding by placing judgment on emotion instead of curiosity on experience. When someone is emotional, they're not asking you to measure their feelings, they're asking you to hear them. Your overreacting skips over that entirely. It assumes that you are the judge of how someone else should feel, and that assumption makes people feel small. It tells them that their reality doesn't count. Even if your intention is to de-escalate, what they hear is, "You shouldn't feel this way," and that creates instant distance. Because the moment someone feels invalidated, they stop explaining what's really going on and start fighting to defend their right to feel at all. Every emotion has a reason, even if you don't understand it yet. Calling it an overreaction doesn't make the emotion disappear. It just forces it underground. The person might quiet down, but inside they're holding resentment, confusion, and hurt. Those feelings don't fade, they fester. And later, they show up as sarcasm, withdrawal, or sudden anger about something small. What looked like an overreaction was often the result of many moments of feeling unheard. The real overreaction isn't the emotion, it's the accumulation of every time that emotion was dismissed before. When you find yourself tempted to say you're overreacting, that's your signal to slow down and get curious. Ask yourself, what might this emotion be trying to tell me? Maybe they're not reacting to this moment, but to a pattern that's been repeating. Maybe it's not about the words you said, but the way they felt ignored in the past. Emotions don't live in isolation. They come from somewhere. And when you choose curiosity instead of criticism, you shift the entire tone of the conversation. You move from opposition to empathy, from resistance to relationship. A better way to handle these moments is to name what you see without labeling it. You can say, I can tell this really matters to you, or it seems like this hit a nerve. Help me understand why. That language validates their emotional truth without surrendering yours. It communicates that you care about how they feel, even if you don't fully agree with their perspective. It invites them to explain instead of defend. And once someone feels safe enough to explain, the intensity naturally drops. They don't have to fight to be heard anymore because you've already given them permission to be. The power of emotional validation isn't about agreeing with everything someone says. It's about making space for their reality to exist alongside yours. You can disagree with their reaction while still acknowledging their experience. That's emotional intelligence. When someone feels safe enough to feel, conversations evolve from arguments into understanding. The phrase, "you're overreacting," blocks that growth because it tells the other person to shrink. But when you replace it with empathy, you give them room to expand. And that expansion is what turns conflict into communication. In the end, most people aren't asking for perfect words. They're asking for presence. They don't need you to solve their emotions. They need you to respect them. When you respond to emotion with validation instead of judgment, you break the pattern of defensiveness that keeps conversations stuck. The goal isn't to control how big someone feels. It's to create a space big enough to hold it. Because people don't calm down when told to minimize their feelings. They calm down when they feel like their feelings finally matter. Honesty is often seen as a virtue, and rightly so, but honesty without empathy becomes cruelty. The phrase, "I'm just being honest," sounds noble on the surface, yet it often hides something much less noble underneath, a lack of emotional awareness. It's the shield people use when they want to say something sharp but avoid responsibility for the hurt it causes. The truth isn't meant to wound, it's meant to enlighten. But when honesty is used like a weapon, it stops being truth. It becomes judgment dressed in justification. "I'm just being honest" tries to make the speaker feel right instead of making the listener feel understood. When someone says those words, what they usually mean is, "I want to say this, and I don't want to deal with the consequences." It's a defense mechanism, not a communication tool. Real honesty requires courage, but also compassion. It means taking a moment to ask yourself, does what I'm about to say bring clarity, or does it just bring pain? Because honesty isn't only about what you say, it's about how you say it. You can deliver the same truth with care, and it lands differently. "You look tired" can be said with concern or with criticism. The difference isn't in the words, it's in the intention behind them. When "I'm just being honest" enters a conversation, it signals that empathy has exited. The focus shifts from connection to justification. Instead of asking, "Did I communicate that kindly?" the person thinks, "Well, at least I told the truth." But the truth, when delivered harshly, closes hearts instead of opening them. Honesty without gentleness often makes people defensive, not receptive. They stop hearing your message and start remembering how your words made them feel. And when emotions take over, logic disappears. The opportunity for genuine understanding fades, replaced by resentment and retreat. Honesty done right is never about dumping your opinions. It's about delivering insight in a way the other person can hold. If your words are true, but your tone is cold, the truth gets lost in the chill. Emotional maturity means knowing that timing and tone matter just as much as truth. There's a time for directness and a time for softness. You can say, I think we need to talk about this, instead of, I'm just being honest, but you're the problem. The first invites dialogue, the second invites defensiveness. How you package honesty determines whether it heals or harms. Another hidden danger in I'm just being honest is that it centers you instead of the relationship. It prioritizes expression over impact. You might feel relieved after saying it, but the other person is left carrying the weight of your unfiltered truth. That's not authenticity, it's emotional dumping. Authenticity is brave, but it's also kind. It takes responsibility for how your words might land. When you speak truth with care, it builds trust. When you speak truth carelessly, it builds walls. The goal isn't to prove you're right, it's to communicate in a way that strengthens connection rather than breaking it. Sometimes we confuse